I want to talk about the philosophy and the teaching that has most influenced my life, which is the Buddhist teachings and Buddhist philosophy. It's also because of the way my father influenced me in the way he practiced that teaching, not in a ritualistic way by going to temple every month and doing your gathas, which is the prayers, and asking for something, asking for help from a deity that was out there. No, his was a very pragmatic practice, and that included mindfulness, meditation, and the way he lived his life in that moderate middle path. For me, was a great example. He was a teacher, he was a principal, and as an educator, I saw him as an incredibly balanced human being. And I know now that I look back, as I am, I am now a senior citizen, that life he led was a very balanced life, which was a great example for myself and my family, and as well as all the students that I meet of his in my life, who said, "Wow, he inspired me. What a wonderful teacher he was." So this is where the Buddhist principles come into play, because he was one of the key founders of Buddhist Publication Society in the hill capital of Kandy in Sri Lanka, which publishes still amazing books, starting with these small books called Bodhi Leaves, simple little books. For instance, this is Jataka Tales of the Buddha, written by Ken and Vishaka Kawasaki, Transmitting the Dhamma, Role of the Teacher in Buddhism by Susan Elbaum Jutla, and Parents and Children by Venerable Madagama Vajiranga and Nayaka Thera. So these books really influenced me at a time when I was in my late teens, with the simple message of the teachings of the Buddha. So the first principle that was taught to me by a monk in the Sunday school was the three truths of life. Life is dukkha, there's suffering and unsatisfactoriness of life, which was palpable for me as a 12-year-old to see. Life is uncertain and impermanent. Again, the same thing, I could see that looking around, that things were in flux, things were always changing. And the number three was non-self, which was a little difficult for me to fathom at that time, because I didn't understand the philosophy, the teaching behind it properly. I looked at simply as, I'm there. What do you mean there's no self? I'm thinking, I'm feeling. But that's exactly what the teaching espoused later on, to find out that yes, my body, my thoughts, my feelings, my perceptions, my worldviews, all of those are fleeting, and I cannot really claim it because they change moment by moment. So those profound teachings came to me later in life about non-self. But the practice that was taught to me was meditation by this monk. And I believe I am all over the map. If I'm going to give it a name, modern name is attention deficit. I call it order because it has helped me more than it has hindered my life, because I've been able to really live my life by doing so many things at the same time, which has been a lot of fun for me in that sense. But the mindfulness practice really helped me to find that grounding and find that inner calm when my mind was all over the map. As a 12-year-old, when that monk guided me through the meditation, I felt that calm take over me, and that's when that inquiry started for the rest of my life. And one of the books that I read at the time was The Heart of Buddhist Meditation by Nyanaponika Thero. So Nyanaponika Thero is a German Jewish person who came to Sri Lanka in the 1930s, running away from what was happening in Nazi Germany at the time, and he was inspired by another German monk who had come to Sri Lanka in 1910, called Nana Tiloka. So he set himself up in Kandy in a beautiful, pristine forest called Udawatta. And my father, being a part of the Buddhist community in Kandy, they also were instrumental in setting up Buddhist Publication Society in Kandy, which publishes all these books. So himself and another gentleman that I knew called Richard Abesekara, again a very pious, beautiful human being, and Venerable Nyanaponika were instrumental in setting up Buddhist Publication Society. So my father used to take me to the forest, to Udawatta, every month or so. He would go and meet the monk, and have Dhamma discussions. So we parked the car at the edge of the forest and walked through this forest. It was just pristine. He's still there, protected, into this hermitage where he lived, and meditated and contemplated. And my father would get into Dhamma discussions with him while I would go around looking for monkeys. And then I find them meditating together. So whenever I saw him, because he was a large, imposing European, and my image of a large, imposing European, as like, now this is when I was about 5, 6, 7 years old, was fear. But he just exuded love, and I couldn't quite make that connection of that kindness that came out of him. And my father had many other monk friends too, and all of them, Venerable Pedasi, and there was another monk who used to come when we were very small, called Venerable Sobita from Sorbonne in Paris. He used to come and hang out with my father, and I felt a sense of calm in them that I couldn't quite really make sense of at the time as a kid, but I noticed it, and now I know why. Because it's through this practice that you calm and collect your mind. And I want to read something, a passage from Venerable Nyanaponika's book, The Heart of Buddhist Meditation. It's called A Handbook of Mental Training Based on the Buddha's Way of Mindfulness. And also to make note that John Kabat-Zinn, who's a founder of mindfulness-based stress reduction programs from the Boston University, has popularized MBSR and mindfulness all over the world right now. And he said in a discussion that this is the book that inspired him to get into this practice. So I feel really privileged at the fact that I have met Venerable Nyanaponika. I knew him, and he passed away in 1992. And this is the passage I want to read from his book. To a thoughtful mind more gripping and heartrending than all the numerous single facts of suffering produced by recent history. Now remember, the World War II ended only like 15, 18 years before this book was published in 1962. And he goes on to say, is the uncanny, tragic monotony of behavior that prompts mankind to prepare again and again for a new bout of that raving madness called war. The same old mechanism is at work again, the interaction of greed and fear, right? And that's the foundation of why we are seeing the maladies of this earth right now, right? Lust for power or desire to dominate are barely restrained by fear. The fear of man's own vastly improved instruments of destruction. Fear, however, is not a very reliable brake on man's impulses, he says. And it constantly poisons the atmosphere by creating a feeling of frustration, which again will fan fires of hate. And we are seeing that right now in Technicolor around the world as greed, hatred, and the delusion, the ignorance of the nature of life is really perpetuating right now when the material world is separated from nature. But men still bungle only with the symptoms of their malady, because we are not even aware of that root cause of fear as to the way we show up in the world right now with the kind of violence we are showing up. Remaining blind to the source of illness, which is no other than the 3 strong roots of everything evil, and it's called akusala mula, pointed out by the Buddha: greed, hatred, and delusion. Then he goes on to say, to this sick and truly demented world of ours, there comes an ancient teaching of eternal wisdom and unfailing guidance, the Buddha Dhamma, the doctrine of the enlightened one, with its message of power of healing. And that's loving kindness, compassion, empathy, sympathetic joy, genuinely feeling happiness for somebody else's success, and equanimity. So you find that power of balance, you find that the peace of mind and contentment as we live life around in a very uncertain, impermanent world, by keeping ourselves grounded through the mindfulness practice as at the core. And this was demonstrated very clearly by the 19 monks who walked from Fort Worth, Texas to Washington, D.C., which has aroused incredible interest in the United States of America, where we are seeing the gutter of humanity on one side, and we are seeing the beauty of humanity on the other side, the contrast, and we are seeing people waking up to this. And it is through that personal practice, personal responsibility, that mindfulness practice, which one has to do on a daily basis. The mind-body practice has to happen on a daily basis. Otherwise, we lose that practice like an elastic. We have to keep it taut. So this is what I'm talking about here, and I just wanted to present that to you today on a beautiful, sunny, still a winter day out there in Ottawa. Be well, be happy.